Squadrons become part of the group, groups become part of the wing. And there are now 9. So it's a growing concern. The latest one is at Page, just outside of RSW, Fort Myers, and they already have 72 members. That's our hangar and also our aircraft. It's a Cessna 182, beautiful airplane. What's referred to as a G1000 navigation instrument panel, pretty much state of the art, although there's probably another 3 versions of it currently. Has an autopilot in it, and we normally fly with a crew of 3. The pilot, if we're on an emergency mission, the mission observer, and then also the mission scanner. The mission observer for a search and rescue mission is the commander. The pilot is just there to ferry them back and forth safely. So we have about a 6,000 square foot hangar that's provided by the Air Force. But the insurance for it, which is $10,000 a year, the maintenance of it, which operating costs normally about $7,000 a year, and the airplane, if it's not on an Air Force mission, is all from community support. It's, as I said, 182. It has a state-of-the-art communications center. We have UHF, VHF, HF, and HF we can contact basically anybody in the world. But what's important also is that we monitor all the maritime channels. We have capability in the radio room to listen to all the maritime channels, and in the aircraft, we're always monitoring channel 16. So if we're called to respond to something in the water, then we have that immediate response. When Irma went through in 2017, that's what the hangar looked like. It completely destroyed it. That was an $850,000 damage. FEMA paid for 80%. They saw what we were doing and they raised it up to 90%, but the balance had to be paid by us through community support, through donations, etc., so we can do the mission. The primary missions, as we mentioned, it's emergency services, it's cadet programs, and it's also aerospace education. And you can read on some of the things that we do. Homeland security. During World War II, they did border patrol, 30,000 hours worth of border patrol in the Rio Grande in Texas. 30,000 hours. That's during the whole World War II period for illegal immigration. Coastal patrols are done at the Punta Gorda Squadron. They do a harbor patrol that the county also offsets the cost for. It's a shared expense so that they monitor boaters. And we also have cadet programs. And we're fortunate to have Dom in the squadron because he was also the cadet squadron commander. So Dom, you want to add anything to that?
Sure, Bob. Can everybody hear me without the mic?
Yeah.
Over there?
Yeah.
So the cadet program is a very integral part of not only Civil Air Patrol, but to the community as a whole. What the cadet program focuses on is not essentially getting cadets to join the Air Force. It's much deeper than that. We focus on aerospace education, also basically instilling some base values to cadets, starting from the high school level. And an interesting opportunity for the cadets occurs when they can attain a certain rank at the cadet level, as long as they have additional credentials such as their SAT scores and their GPA, they are guaranteed an interview to the Air Force Academy. Not all of our cadets go to the Air Force. Many of our local cadets, as a matter of fact, are interested in naval affairs because we are kind of the closest thing that they're going to get to not only air, but to water as well. And in the past, our cadet groups have interfaced with also the Naval ROTC and Army ROTC cadets, as well as other organizations such as the Boy Scouts of America and the Explorers positions. The cadets, on the other hand, can go on after they've become 18 and they can join the senior squadron. The interesting facet for the cadets is that, and this applied to myself as well, is that's where I had gotten my start in aviation, was that the senior squadron will assist the cadets in their training toward a private pilot's license as long as they are under 18 years of age at no charge. We will also help Air Force ROTC cadets for their orientation rides as well. The other thing about cadets is they also assist with search and rescue missions on the ground. For example, if we have missing people on land, they assist with that. We assist as far as the flying portion, especially with missing boaters, and we interface with the Coast Guard as well. But the cadets are trained from day one to interface and to be an integral part of that program. So then they can go on and become productive adults in society as well. I hope that covers it. Anybody have any questions, by all means, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
It's one of the greatest rewards, as one of the sidelines, which is most important. Besides emergency services and search and rescue and immigration, illegal immigration trafficking, drug control as well. Also, we deliver blood when the requirement exists, any kind of supplies. The interesting thing is that the greatest reward for us as pilots is when we take cadets up. And we've had young ladies, we've had young guys. The youngest I've had was 14 years old. We let them try to fly the controls. And a 16-year-old young lady. When you're finished and you're debriefing them, their parents are waiting to pick them up to hear how they did. And everything's done. I'm filling out some of the paperwork, and then they'll come over and say, "Excuse me, sir, excuse me." Put their hands up. Just want to thank you very much. I mean, how polite, how nice that is to see the youth of America actually being courteous. Those are the types of things that sound very simple, but we teach them that as well.
Bob?
Yes, sir.
How did the cadets learn, how did the youth learn about a cadet program? Are you in high schools or?
They have a junior ROTC program, Reserved Officers Training Corps, which allows them to go into the military if they pass once they complete and they go into a certain rank. And then there's ROTC in university as well. That's what I went through. Graduated as second lieutenant, retired as a lieutenant colonel. And I was on an Air Force scholarship. The Air Force actually paid for my entire undergraduate degree, and they paid for my MBA. So those are the good things that you get out of it. So as a result, there is a website, Civil Air Patrol, you can look it up, and then you can just go in and just by Squadron, just find out the area that you're interested in, and it's very easy. The other thing is I'll throw the slide up at that I had in the beginning with the address there, which would help. And certainly when you're on the website for Marco Island Civil Air Patrol, the telephone number that comes up is my telephone number. I make sure that every new member that comes in, I personally take time, invite them to lunch, invite them to breakfast, and we sit down and we talk about it. I want to find out what their interests are. They want to find out what we expect. And if there's a match, then we encourage them to join. So it's not a forced labor camp. It's mutual respect for each other and trying to help each other find, what your interests are. By the way, another sailing story. My nephew lives in the UK, and he is a certified ship's captain. He would take boats, pick them up in China, deliver them to different parts of the world. He was living in South Africa at the time. When he came back to England as a full-blown skipper, he actually was selected as a captain for one of the Clipper races. I don't know if you're familiar with the Clipper race, but the Clipper race is around the world. Well, Peter, coming out of China and heading for San Francisco, realize they start from England into Solent, and they come on down, they go into La Rochelle, France, across to Buenos Aires, down around the Horn. Really treacherous waters. People don't realize it. They think the Pacific is calm. He said the greatest jubilation and welcoming that they received, and there are 12 boats every year. You look it up on the web, Clipper races. coming out of China, probably about 600 nautical miles from the coast of San Francisco. He was off duty in his bunk, got hit by a rogue wave at night. The Clipper, which is about 70 feet, went over 120 degrees. They had, people could actually buy passage on the ship and you know, pay for that passage in 2 segments. So you had, you know, lawyers, dentists, doctors, you know, people having an adventure. Anyway, there was one gentleman that broke his arm. The Coast Guard in Falmouth, England, picked up the emergency distress signal when they hit the water. They in turn radio ahead to the Coast Guard in San Francisco. They deployed a C-130 Hercules aircraft. They found them. They diverted a merchant ship, dropped supplies, took the gentleman with the broken arm off the boat onto the ship where they had medical attendants. And then Peter basically motored in all that distance into San Francisco for complete overhauls. That was in 2012. You could look it up on the web, in Google, Clipper Races 2012, and you'll see the name of the boat that he was sponsored, was called the California. So quite an exciting story. Okay, so once again, our radio room, we have a state-of-the-art radio room, as I said, HF, UHF, and VHF radios, monitoring maritime signals. We can cover all of them. And in the airplane itself, we always monitor channel 16. We make sure that the kids also, for aerospace education, one of the things we did, which I attended also, my aerospace education officer has a relationship with day camp at Mackle Park at Marco Island. And he developed this air-pumped rocket system. He must have had about 20 of them. We must have had about 50 kids, and each one of them got to fire their rocket, and it went a far distance. They were excited. They were, you know, the newspapers covered it, the parents were, you know, gleeful. It's just now become an annual thing that we volunteer to do for the kids. Also, the same thing at Lely had open house with them as well. And then they also go out this weekend. If you're out boating, you may see us because we have a major exercise this weekend. We have total of 7 sorties this weekend and a ground team as well. So the cadets will go out and they will actually search for a beacon which will be planted somewhere in a designated area, and they have to find it. And then when they find it, they have to treat it accordingly as if it's a person that has been, you know, it's crashed, and they have to start applying first aid until the proper authorities come. To take a look at what it looks like, where you see that arrow, that is actually a boat that's in distress, that was sending out a signal. That's how difficult it is to see. What I'm going to show you next is a new system called Waldo, which we have been training with the last few months very intensely. Its baseline is Google Earth, but I'll let one of my colleagues who I put together an instructor team.
Your slide doesn't have that arrow for anybody that can't see it, it's right here.
Oh, thanks for doing that. Yeah, that's it. It's even hard to see the arrow.
There it is.
Okay. So with that, what we used before was a camera out the window. An Air Force issued Nikon camera, one of the sophisticated versions, and hanging out the window, the pilot has to be able to get the right aspect. He has to be able to be as accurate as possible so that the aerial photographer in the back can actually focus onto the target. Now here, bear with me because this is taken out from a Wink News interview that we had. They rang and called me and they asked if they could have an interview. They'd like to know more about the Waldo system because it is a game changer, especially coming up on hurricane season. We may have an advert in here first. Let's see how it goes. That's the Waldo system.